菜根谭
Tending the roots of wisdom.
249，消歇幻业，增长道心。
249. Eliminate worldly distractions. And cultivate the heart of the Tao.
菜根谭原文：色欲火炽，而一念疾病时，便心似寒灰；名利宜甘，而一想到死地，便味如嚼蜡。故人常忧死虑病，亦可消幻业而长道心。
白话文注解：色欲像烈火一样燃烧起来时，只要想一想生病的痛苦，烈火就会变得像一堆冷灰；功名利禄像蜂蜜一般甘美时，只要想一想死地的情景，名位财富就会像嚼蜡一般无味。所以一个人要经常思虑疾病和死亡，这样也可以消除些罪恶，而增长一些尽德修业之心。
249-1. When sensual desires ignite like a blazing fire, just contemplate the suffering of illness, and that fire will turn into cold ashes. When ambitions and material gains seem as sweet as honey, just envision the scene of death, and positions and wealth will taste as bland as wax. Therefore, a person should frequently contemplate disease and death. Doing so can help eradicate some vices, and cultivate a heart devoted to virtue and spiritual practice. Translated by Bayandefu.
249-2. Lust burns like a fire, but one thought of how that might lead to illness will turn the excitement into cold ashes. Fame and fortune beckon like sweets, but one thought about dying will make them taste like wax. Thus people can muse about death and suffering, and rid themselves of illusions, thus nourishing the Tao of mind. Translated by Robert Aitken Daniel W. Wyckoff. 249-3. Lust is as intense and hard to bear as a flame. But when one thinks of how abandoning oneself to lust can bring about illness and suffering, the fire of desire can immediately turn into a heap of cold ashes. Fame and fortune are as enticing as delicious sweets. But when one thinks of how striving for name and gain can result in death, then they at once become tasteless. Therefore, if you constantly bear in mind suffering and death, you will eradicate lust and craving for fame and wealth from your heart, and strengthen your desire for enlightenment. Translated by Paul White.
249-4. When sensual desires blaze like a fierce fire, just contemplate the pain of illness, and the fire turns into cold ashes. When fame and wealth seem as sweet as honey, just imagine the scene of death, and the allure of status and riches becomes as tasteless as chewing wax. Therefore, one should frequently contemplate illness and death, as it can dispel sinful thoughts and cultivate a heart for moral and virtuous pursuits. Translated by Wen Lin.
250，退步宽平，清淡悠久。
250. Retreat to simplicity and tranquility, enduring with a calm and light-hearted spirit.
菜根谭原文：争先的路径窄，退后一步自宽平一步；浓艳的滋味短，清淡一分自悠长一分。
白话文注解：逞强好胜，与别人争抢，就觉得道路拥挤狭窄；假如能退后一步，自然会觉得面前的道路宽平很多。浓烈的滋味是短暂的，清淡一分，滋味反而会悠长一分。
250-1. Being competitive and eager to prove oneself, constantly contending with others, one might perceive the path as congested and narrow. But if one can take a step back, they will naturally find the road ahead broader and smoother. Intense flavors are fleeting. It's the subtle tastes that linger. Translated by Bayandefu.
250-2. The road to get ahead is narrow, but in stepping back a pace, one finds that the road is wider by a step. The flavors of rich elaborate food last but a moment, but if it is a bit blander, the taste lingers a little longer. Translated by Robert Aitken Daniel W. Wyckoff. 250-3. When everybody is struggling to get ahead on a narrow road, the way seems even more congested. But if, at such a time, you step back a pace, you will immediately find that the way has become a bit more spacious. Rich and pungent food may be stimulating for a few moments, but it is plain dishes that leave a nice aftertaste. Translated by Paul White.
250-4. Being competitive and eager to win. One might feel the path is crowded and narrow. If one could take a step back, the road ahead would naturally seem broader and more spacious. Intense flavors are fleeting, while a subtle taste can be enduring. Translated by Wen Lin.
251. 修养定静，临变不乱。
251. Cultivate composure through discipline, and remain steady in the face of change.
菜根谭原文：忙处不乱性，虚闲处心神养得清，死时不动心，虚生时事物看得破。
白话文注解：事务繁忙时，想要保持镇静不犯错误，平日休闲的时候就必须修养身心的清静；想要在面对死亡时不伤心恐惧，活着时就必须先将人生之无常悟透。
251-1. During busy times when affairs are overwhelming, maintaining composure and avoiding mistakes requires a focus on cultivating one's physical and mental well-being in regular moments. To face death without sorrow or fear, one must first deeply understand the impermanence of life while alive. Translated by Bian Defu.
251-2. To keep your nature unruffled in times of stress, you must learn to keep your spirit calm and pure in times of leisure. To keep your composure in the face of death, you must learn to see through things while you are alive. Translated by Robert Aitken Daniel W. Wyckoff. 251-3. If you wish to preserve your mind untroubled in hectic times, you must train your spirit to be pure and clear in times of leisure. If you want to be composed and fearless in the face of death, you must get a thoroughgoing grasp of things, and know clearly that where there is life there is also death. Translated by Paul White.
251-4. In times of busy affairs, to maintain composure and avoid mistakes, one must cultivate tranquility in mind and body during leisure time. To face death without sorrow and fear, one must first comprehend the impermanence of life while still alive. Translated by Wen Lin.
252. 也无荣辱，道无颜良。
252. Conceal oneself without pride or disgrace. Follow the Tao without being swayed by prosperity or adversity.
菜根谭原文：隐逸林中无荣辱，道义路上无颜良。
白话文注解：对于退隐林泉、与世无争的人来说，不会在意俗世的荣辱；对于坚守道义、心存济世救民的人来说，不会计较人情的冷暖厚薄。
252-1. For those who retreat to the woods and springs, seeking seclusion and disengagement from the world, they won't be concerned with worldly fame or disgrace. For those who uphold righteousness and have a heart dedicated to helping and saving others, they won't be preoccupied with the fickleness of human sentiments. Translated by Bian Defu.
252-2. There is no honor or disgrace in the forest of seclusion. There is no flaming up or cooling down on the road of moral principle. Translated by Robert Aitken Daniel W. Wyckoff. 252-3. Among hermits there is neither worldly esteem nor worldly disgrace. Along the path of justice there should be no favoring of some and rejecting of others. Translated by Paul White.
252-4. For those who withdraw to the secluded woods and seek no contention with the world, they do not concern themselves with worldly honors and disgraces. For those who uphold righteousness and have a heart to help and save others, they do not fuss over the warmth or chill of human emotions. Translated by Wen Lin.
253. 除去恼热，身心安乐。
253. Remove irritation and heat, and both body and mind will find peace and joy.
菜根谭原文：热不必除，而除此热恼，身常在清凉台上，穷不可遣，而遣此穷愁，心常居安乐窝中。
白话文注解：气候的燥热根本不必用特殊方式消除，只要消除烦躁不安的情绪，身体犹如坐在凉亭上一般凉爽；消除贫穷也不必有特殊方法， 只要能排除因贫穷而生的愁绪，心境就宛如生活在快乐世界一般幸福。
253-1. The intense heat of the climate doesn't necessarily need to be counteracted with special means. By eliminating restlessness and unease, the body can feel as cool as sitting in a pavilion. Similarly, eliminating poverty doesn't require extraordinary methods. If one can dispel the anxieties stemming from poverty, their state of mind can be as joyful as living in a world of happiness. Translated by Bayan Defu.
253-2, There is no need to get rid of heat. Rid yourself of your fervent mind and you will always find yourself reclining on a cool and breezy terrace. There is no need to chase away poverty. Chase away worry about poverty and you will always find yourself ensconced in a peaceful and happy nest. Translated by Robert Aitken Daniel W. Wyckoff. 253-3, There is no need to make efforts to get rid of parching heat, all you have to do is expel vexing thoughts about parching heat from your mind. Then you will always feel as if you are on a breeze-cooled terrace. There is little you can do in coping with poverty, but you can drive out distressing thoughts about poverty from your mind. If you do so, even if you live in a freezing hovel you will always feel as if you are living in a comfortable nest. Translated by Paul White.
253-4. The intense heat of the climate doesn't need any special means to eliminate. Just eliminate the restless and uneasy emotions, and the body feels as cool as sitting in a pavilion. Similarly, eliminating poverty doesn't require special methods. Just dispel the worries born of poverty, and the state of mind becomes as happy as living in a joyful world. Translated by Wen Lin.
254. 居安思危，处进思退。
254. Think of danger in times of safety. Consider retreat while making progress.
菜根谭原文：进步处便思退步，庶免触藩之祸。着手时先图放手，才脱骑虎之危。
白话文注解：事业进展顺利时，就应该备有一个抽身隐退的预案，以免将来像山羊角夹在篱笆里一般，把自己弄得进退两难。刚入手做一件事时，就要预先策划好，在什么情况下必须罢手，不至于以后出现骑虎难下的局面。
254-1. When your career is progressing smoothly, it's wise to have a plan in place for stepping back and withdrawing. This prevents you from finding yourself in a situation where you're as stuck as a goat caught in a fence, with no easy way to advance or retreat. As you embark on a new endeavor, plan in advance the circumstances under which you must stop. This ensures that you won't find yourself in a situation where it's difficult to disengage later on. Translated by Bayan Defu.
254-2, If you think about stepping back when you are advancing, you will avoid getting stuck in a hedge. If you think about desisting when you are planning a venture, you will avoid the danger of riding a tiger. Translated by Robert Aitken Daniel W. Wyckoff. 254-3. At times when you are making great strides forward in your undertakings, keep in mind the fact that at some time in the future matters may not go so smoothly, and you must think of a way to step backward. This is perhaps the only way for you to avoid the disasters which are inherent in both advance and retreat. When you set your hand to a task, it is best to first figure out a good way to wind it up. This is perhaps the only way for you to avoid the problem of riding a tiger. It is dangerous to dismount. Translated by Paul White.
254-4. When the career is progressing smoothly, one should have a plan for withdrawing and retiring, so as not to end up in a dilemma like a goat's horns caught in a fence in the future. When embarking on a new endeavor, it's essential to plan in advance under what circumstances one must withdraw, preventing a situation where it becomes difficult to disengage later on. Translated by Wen Lin.
255. 贪富易贫，知足安贫。
255. Greedy for wealth is also a kind of poverty. Contentment is true wealth in poverty.
菜根谭原文：贪得者，分金恨不得玉，丰功愿不受侯，权豪自甘其盖。 知足者，离耕止于高粱，不袍暖于湖河，边民不让王公。
白话文注解：贪得无厌的人，给他金子还怨恨没有得到珠宝，封他公爵还怨恨没封过侯爵。这种人无论财富和权力如何显赫，仍然有乞丐的心态，永不满足。知足常乐的人，吃着野菜羹却认为美过山珍海味，穿着粗布袍却觉得比狐皮袄还暖和。这种人虽然身为平民，但实际上比王公贵族还要快乐。
255-1. Those who are insatiable in their desires will still complain when given gold and silver, and they will resent not being given jade. Even if they are bestowed a dukedom, they will resent not being granted a marquisate. Such individuals, though they hold positions of wealth and privilege, are essentially voluntarily accepting the role of beggars. Those who recognize contentment, even if they eat plain food and wild vegetables, find it sweeter than feasting on the finest delicacies. Wearing simple fabrics and cotton robes is warmer to them than wearing fox fur or marten pelts. Although they may be considered commoners, in reality, they possess a nobility that surpasses even royalty. Translated by Bayandefu.
255-2. The avaricious person given gold resents not receiving jade. Made a duke, such a person regrets not being made a marquis. Such exalted people behave like beggars. A contented person finds humble watery fare more palatable than rich elaborate food and ordinary clothing warmer than sable and ermine. In caring for people, the contented person is not one bit inferior to a duke or king. Translated by Robert Aitken Daniel W. Wyckoff. 255-3. Even if you give a mean-spirited person gold, he will resent the fact that he has not been given jade. Even if you raise him to the rank of duke, he will resent the fact that he has not been appointed a marquis. Such people, no matter how exalted in wealth and power, still have the mentality of beggars and are never satisfied. A man contented with his lot in life, on the other hand, may eat plain food and find it more delicious than sumptuous dishes, and find the garb of the common people warmer than robes of fox and ermine. Despite his humble station, he will be happier than princes and dukes. Translated by Paul White.
255-4. The insatiable person, given gold, still resents not receiving jewels. If granted the title of a duke, they still resent not being made a marquis. Such individuals, regardless of how conspicuous their wealth and power may be, still harbor the mentality of a beggar, never satisfied. On the other hand, the contented person, even when consuming a simple vegetable soup, considers it more beautiful than exotic delicacies. Wearing coarse robes, they feel warmer than donning a fox fur coat. Despite being a commoner, in reality, they are happier than kings and nobles. Translated by Wen Lin.
256. 隐者高明，省事平安。
256. The wise prefer obscurity, and simplicity leads to peace.
菜根谭原文：今明不若陶明去，练事何如省事闲。
白话文注解：炫耀名声不如无心名位更得其清趣，洞察世事不如清闲自得更得其乐。
256-1. Boasting about reputation is not as fulfilling as having a heart devoid of attachment to fame. Gaining positions and titles with an untroubled mind is more enjoyable than striving to understand the ways of the world. Translated by Bayandefu.
256-2. It is a lot more interesting to conceal one's fame than to boast about it. How can being vexed over the affairs of the world be compared to the leisure that comes from not being burdened by affairs? Translated by Robert Aitken Daniel W. Wyckoff. 256-3. It is better to conceal one's fame than to trumpet it abroad. It is better to do little and find peace and relaxation than to busy oneself trying to become well versed in the world's affairs. Translated by Paul White.
256-4. The pleasure of being free from fame is greater than flaunting one's reputation, and the joy of leisure is greater than the insight gained from understanding the world. Translated by Wen Lin.